Marry me.
The Moonfire Festival was supposed to fix Ginny's awful week. That was the plan. A little dancing, a little drinking, maybe a moment of peace under the silver-lit pines of the Mooncrest Pack. Instead, it turned into the kind of night people whispered about for years. The kind of story pups would retell around bonfires with way too much enthusiasm. Ginny didn't know that yet, of course. Right now, she was simply trying to pretend she wasn't one shove away from throwing herself into the river out of pure stress. She'd spent the last 7 days drowning in work, fighting with her landlord, and rescuing a baby fox that repaid her heroics by biting her shoe, crying, and running off. She needed this festival. She deserved this festival, and she definitely deserved the wolfberry shots Mira kept handing her. "Drink," Mira said, pushing another small glass into her palm. "You're wound tighter than a crossbow. Loosen up. Make questionable choices." Ginny squinted at her. "Questionable choices are your specialty, not mine." "That's rude," Mira said, already smiling. "Now drink." Ginny sighed, tilted her head back, and swallowed. The liquid hit her tongue sweetly, then burned all the way down, like swallowing a cinnamon stick dipped in lightning. She coughed once, blinked twice, and Mira clapped proudly. "That's the spirit." Ginny wasn't sure if it was the spirit, but the warmth spreading through her chest was absolutely trying its best. The festival sprawled beneath the enormous moon, every lantern flickering blue-white against the dark sky. Music thumped, laughter carried, and wolves, shifted and unshifted, moved like a living sea through the forest clearing. Bonfires spiraled upward, painting everything with a wild glow. Couples danced. Warriors competed in strength trials. Vendors sold meat pies, crystals, fortune readings, and very questionable trinkets. It was chaos. Loud, ridiculous, joyful chaos. Ginny finally felt herself breathe. She wandered through the crowd, Mira and Rowan trailing behind her, Mira trying to find more alcohol, Rowan doing the exact opposite. Rowan, who always looked like he was made of sarcasm and mild regret, grabbed her wrist every time she veered toward anything that looked like a bad idea, which meant he was grabbing her wrist constantly. "You're going to regret every decision you make tonight," Rowan muttered. Ginny threw her arm around him. "That's tomorrow Ginny's problem." "You say that every time," he replied. "And tomorrow Ginny handles it like a champion. You cried in a flour barrel last week because you saw a spider." Ginny gasped. "It was enormous. It looked like it paid rent." He opened his mouth to fire something back, but froze. And she felt it too. Someone was watching her. Not normal watching, not casual glancing. This was the kind of stare you could feel down your spine. Slow, heavy, charged. Ginny turned her head. At the edge of the clearing, barely touched by lantern light, stood a man. Tall, still, silent. A presence, not a person. His clothing was dark, his posture controlled, his gaze fixed entirely on her. He didn't smile. He didn't look away. He didn't even blink. The crowd moved around him like he wasn't part of the same world. Ginny inhaled. The air suddenly felt colder, sharper, different. "Who is that?" she whispered. Rowan followed her stare, his face drained of color. "Ginny, don't look at him." "Why not?" "That's..." He exhaled like a man accepting defeat. "That's Lion." The name meant nothing at first. The wolfberry shots had murdered every rational thought in her skull. "Lion," she repeated. "Like, a guy named Lion? Cool name." Mira caught up, looked between Ginny and Rowan, then at the figure watching them. Her jaw dropped. "Oh. Oh no, absolutely not. Ginny, do not." Too late. Curiosity and alcohol had already linked arms and shoved her forward. Ginny stepped toward the man. Rowan hissed her name like a dying kettle. Mira reached out to stop her but missed. She didn't understand the panic. He was just a man. A hot man. A very, very hot man. The kind of hot that should require a license. He stood there like he owned the land, the festival, the moon, hell, maybe even gravity. His aura was too steady, too powerful, too still. Everything about him screamed dominance and danger, but Ginny's mind, floating on a delightful wolfberry cloud, translated that as, "This is a great idea." Ginny marched up to him. Well, marched might be generous. She marched for 8 steps, tripped on step 9, and then aggressively pretended she meant to stumble. The man didn't move, didn't smirk, just watched her. Up close, she realized 3 things. His eyes were unreal, storm gray, sharp, intelligent. He had the posture of someone used to being obeyed without argument. Rowan and Mira were whispering behind her like they were preparing for a funeral. Ginny planted her hands on her hips. "So," she declared, loudly. Too loudly. "Are you staring at me or trying to mind-link me with your eyeballs?" A few heads turned. Lion blinked once. Slowly. "You are intoxicated." Ginny gasped. "Wow, observation skills. 10 out of 10. A ripple of laughter moved through the bystanders. Rowan covered his face. Mira whispered, "We're dead. We are so dead." Ginny didn't back down. The warmth in her blood was now a full blaze. She pointed a finger at Lion's chest. "You think you can just stand there all tall and stare at people like you're judging them from a throne?" Again. He didn't react. Not an inch. Not a twitch. He just watched her with that calm, unreadable look that made her feel like he saw right through her, right past her, right to whatever she was trying to hide from even herself. And something about that infuriated her, or maybe encouraged her. Both were possible. "You know what?" she said, swaying slightly but with full confidence. "If you're going to stare at me like that, you could at least introduce yourself." "Ginny," Rowan hissed, "stop." But she didn't stop. She took one more step closer, close enough to smell his scent, clean, cold, powerful, like rain on stone. Her brain didn't stand a chance. Her mouth took control. "I'm Ginny," she announced, "and you, mysterious, brooding giant man." She poked his chest again. "You should marry me." Silence. Pure, absolute silence. Then the festival exploded. Laughter, gasps, howls, whispered curses. Someone shouted, "She just proposed to him?" Another yelled, "Is she suicidal?" A third screamed, "Get me a recording stone." Rowan made a sound like his soul leaving his body. Mira grabbed Ginny's arm. "We're leaving. Right now." But Ginny was too deep in her performance to retreat. She lifted her chin proudly, drunkenly, dramatically. Lion stared at her, expression finally shifting. Not shock, not annoyance, something much worse. Interest. "Do you know who I am?" he asked quietly. Ginny nodded with too much enthusiasm. "Yep, your name is Lion, very pointy, very intimidating, great bone structure." "That is not," Rowan tried. "Let her finish," Lion said softly. People froze. He had spoken. To her. Directly. Ginny didn't notice the tension slicing through the air. She just took his hand, his massive, calloused, lethal hand, and placed it over her heart. Then she announced, loudly enough for half the pack to hear, "I would make an excellent wife." Somewhere in the crowd, someone fainted. Lion studied her. Really studied her. His eyes swept down her face. Lingering with a strange intensity, an evaluation, a calculation, something heavier than curiosity. "You would," he said. Rowan choked. Mira screamed. The crowd erupted again, but Ginny didn't register any of it, because at that exact moment the world tilted, her vision blurred, her legs wobbled. Oh," she whispered, and she dropped like a stone. Lion caught her before she hit the ground. The last thing she remembered was the warmth of his hand against her back, the low murmur of his voice saying something she couldn't make out, and the very distant realization that she had probably made a terrible life choice. Then everything went black. The festival roared with whispers. Because when Ginny fainted into the arms of the most powerful alpha in the entire region, the Alpha King, he didn't push her away. He held her. And he did not look amused. He looked invested. And that, for the Mooncrest Pack, was the beginning of a scandal they would never let die. Ginny woke up slowly, like her brain was rebooting one mortifying memory at a time. First came the throbbing headache, sharp, mean, and far too committed. Then the dry mouth. Then the feeling of dread in her stomach, heavy as a brick. She groaned and rolled over. Someone gasped nearby. "She's awake!" Ginny's eyes snapped open. Her first mistake was looking directly into the face of her neighbor, Pippa, who was peering at her like she was some kind of legendary disaster that had finally come to life. "Oh no," Ginny muttered. "Why are you here? Why is anyone here? Why am I here?" Pippa didn't answer. She bolted out of the room. Ginny sat up. Her head spun. Her bed felt too soft. Her room felt wrong. Too neat, too warm, too borrowed. Where am I? Before she could stand, Mira burst into the doorway, hair wild, eyes brighter than a lightning strike. "You're alive," Mira said breathlessly. "Good, great, because the entire pack is talking about you." Ginny paled. "What did I do?" Rowan appeared behind Mira, holding a cup of water like it was a peace offering. "Would you like the gentle version, or the truth?" "Truth," Ginny said, sipping the water. "Rip off the bandage." Rowan inhaled deeply. "You proposed to the Alpha King." Ginny spit water everywhere. Mira winced. "All over my boots. Fantastic." "I what?" Ginny clutched the blanket like it might save her soul. "You know," Rowan continued, "that tall, terrifying wall of dominance you were yelling at? That was Lion Draven. Lion, Draven, Alpha King, ruler of the Silverbound Wilds. The man whose pack warriors treat silence like a personality trait." Ginny stared at him. "No, absolutely not. That's a lie. I need you to tell a better lie." "It's not a lie," Mira said. "We wish it was." Ginny grabbed her pillow and screamed into it. Mira patted her back. "You understand why the entire pack is buzzing, right?" "No," Ginny croaked. Rowan lifted a brow. "You loudly proposed to the most dangerous alpha in existence, in public, during the biggest festival of the year." Ginny pulled the blanket over her head. "I did not." "You did," Mira supplied. "With flair." "I hate flair," Ginny groaned. "That's the best part," Rowan added. "You told him to marry you because, quote, his bone structure is intimidating." Ginny's entire body curled into itself. "Kill me." "Oh, trust me," Rowan said. "Half the pack thought he might." Ginny froze. "Might what?" Mira and Rowan exchanged a look full of dread and disbelief. "He didn't," Mira said slowly. "He didn't punish you. He didn't reject you. He didn't even growl." Rowan nodded. "Which, for him, is basically a marriage announcement." Ginny blinked. "Explain." Slowly. Mira sat down on the edge of the bed. "Ginny, you don't know the stories?" "What stories?" "Lion Draven doesn't tolerate challenges. He doesn't tolerate disrespect. He doesn't tolerate anything that even smells like stepping over a boundary. Anyone else who tried what you did would have been flat on their back for a very different reason." Ginny stared at her. "He doesn't let people touch him," Rowan added. "Ever. But you? You poked him in the chest. Poked him. And he just stood there and took it." Ginny felt faint all over again. "Why would he do that?" Mira exhaled. "We don't know. But the pack has theories. Good theories or terrible ones? Terrible, Rowan said immediately. Extremely terrible. Ginny groaned. Tell me. Mira dropped her voice. They think he's considering accepting your proposal. Ginny screamed again, louder this time. Rowan clapped a hand over her mouth. Do not scream. People are outside listening. Ginny froze. Why? Mira gave a grim little smile. Because Lion brought you home last night. Ginny blinked. He what? He carried you, Rowan said, like some dramatic romance hero. It was a lot. Ginny sank back against the pillows. I can never leave this room again. Well, Mira said gently, you might want to reconsider. Because the rumors? They're getting worse. Worse how? Rowan held up 3 fingers. 1. People think you did it on purpose to get Lion's attention. Ginny gagged. Absolutely not. 2. They think he liked it. Ginny pinched the bridge of her nose. Why is my life a circus? And 3, Mira said, voice dropping even lower. Some are saying you might be his fated mate. Ginny slapped both hands over her face. I am going to die. You're not, Rowan said, but you might wish you did. Ginny glared at him. Look, Rowan added, it will blow over. Eventually, Mira corrected. In a few years, Rowan corrected her. Ginny flung a pillow at his head. Okay, Rowan said, dodging it. Maybe that was harsh, but this is a Moonfire-level scandal. And it gets worse, Mira said. Ginny stared at her. Stop saying that. Why does everything get worse? Mira hesitated. Because Lion didn't deny anything. Ginny froze. What? He didn't correct anyone, Mira continued. Not the witnesses, not the guards, not the council members who asked what happened. He just looked at them. That's bad, Rowan added. That's very bad. His look is basically a royal decree. So now, Mira finished, everyone thinks he's considering binding the vow. Ginny pushed herself upright. No, I am not marrying anyone, especially not an Alpha King. I'm barely qualified to manage my laundry. Rowan snorted. Facts. Mira leaned in. Do you actually remember anything? Anything at all? Ginny rubbed her temples. I remember walking toward him. I remember poking him. Then, warmth. And falling. And his voice. Rowan frowned. What did he say? Ginny closed her eyes. I couldn't make it out. The door slammed open. They all jumped. Pippa reappeared, breathless and too excited for anyone's comfort. He's coming. Ginny blinked. Who's coming? Pippa looked at her like the question itself was illegal. Lion Draven. Ginny's soul left her body. Rowan swore under his breath. Mira grabbed Ginny's hand. Pippa squealed like this was the best gossip she'd ever witnessed. Coming here? Rowan asked tightly. Yes, Pippa said. He's heading up the path with Beta Kale and Gamma Talus. The whole pack is following them. Ginny's headache vanished, replaced by sheer panic. Why would he come here? Mira swallowed. Probably because you announced you wanted to marry him. Ginny shot up. Take it back. That's not how it works, Rowan said. Pippa leaned in dramatically. He looked very serious. Ginny felt her knees wobble. I can't do this. What do I do? Rowan grabbed her shoulders. Rule 1, don't faint again. Mira nodded. Rule 2, don't challenge him. Rule 3, Pippa said, don't propose again. I didn't mean to the first time, Ginny shrieked, but footsteps were already approaching, heavy, unhurried, inevitable. Lion Draven did not rush. He did not hurry. He moved the way storms rolled across the mountains, slow, deliberate, unstoppable. Mira pushed Ginny toward the mirror. Fix your hair. Ginny looked. Her hair was a disaster. Her face was flushed. Her eyes looked like she had kissed a tornado. It's hopeless, Ginny whispered. Rowan nodded. Absolutely hopeless. Then the knock came. 3 slow, solid hits on the door. Ginny froze. So did everyone else. No conversation. No whisper. No breath. Just silence. And the presence of a man who never visited anyone unless it mattered. Ginny, Rowan whispered. Open the door. Ginny turned toward the entrance. Another knock. Deeper this time. A command wrapped in courtesy. She stepped forward, her heart thundering. When she opened the door, she saw him. Lion Draven. Alpha King. Tall, controlled. Eyes cool as morning frost. Beta Kale stood on his left. Broad, unreadable, dangerous. Gamma Talus stood on his right. Sharp, observant, assessing. And behind them, half the pack. Watching, waiting, breathless. Ginny swallowed. Good morning? Lion didn't smile. He didn't need to. Ginny, he said simply, we need to talk. Those 5 words alone were enough to rewire her entire nervous system. Because no matter how much she wished last night had been a stupid, drunken blur, the Alpha King had not forgotten a single thing. And from the way he looked at her now, he had no intention of letting it go. Ginny didn't breathe for a full 3 seconds. Lion stood in her doorway like he owned the threshold. Actually, like he owned the entire planet, and was simply choosing not to mention it. May we come in? Lion asked. It wasn't really a question. Ginny stepped back automatically. Lion, Kale, and Talus entered her small house, their presence swallowing the room so completely she momentarily wondered if she should apologize for the size of her living space. But no, her brain wasn't operating well enough to produce full thoughts. Pippa lingered outside with the drooling crowd of gossip vampires. Rowan shut the door before she could slither in. Once they were inside, Lion turned his gaze toward Ginny with laser focus. It wasn't hostile. It wasn't kind. It was deciding. Kale crossed his arms. Talus scanned the room like he was mapping escape routes or enemy positions. These men came prepared for everything except, apparently, casual social visits. Ginny cleared her throat. So, morning, or afternoon. I don't actually know what time it is. Lion didn't blink. You spoke vows under the full moon. Ginny's stomach dropped. Okay, see, I knew this conversation was going to be terrible. They were public, Lion continued, and intentional. Ginny threw her hands up. I was drunk. That is irrelevant, he said. Oh my goddess, Ginny muttered, pressing her palms to her forehead. Please tell me there's a rule for accidental vows. There is, Kyle said. Ginny's eyes flew to him. Really, thank the stars. But, Kyle added, it does not apply when directed at the Alpha King. Ginny stared at him. Why would that be a rule? Talus answered this time, voice dry. Because people do not usually survive the attempt. Ginny nearly sat on the floor. Lion watched her reaction with unnerving attention. Your vow was heard by witnesses. It cannot be ignored. Oh, I can ignore it, Ginny said quickly. Watch me. I can ignore it so hard I'll break a world record. Kale let out the smallest exhale, somewhere between amusement and pity. That is not how it works. Ginny spun toward Rowan and Mira. Back me up. Rowan just stood there, sympathetic but entirely unhelpful. He's right, Mira mouthed. You're doomed. Ginny turned back to Lion. Are you seriously considering my moon-soaked, alcohol-drenched disaster of a proposal? Lion stepped closer. Too close. Close enough that she felt the shift in the air around him, like pressure dropping before a storm. You placed your hand on my chest, he said quietly, and offered yourself as my wife. Ginny winced. Right, I did do that. But in my defense, your chest looked like it could hypnotize people. Someone behind her snorted. Rowan. Definitely Rowan. Lion's eyes flickered, just for a moment. Not amusement, something sharper. You invoked a vow, Lion said. Ancient law dictates that if an alpha accepts, the vow becomes binding. That's great, Ginny said. You didn't accept. Perfect solution. Lion stared at her, dead serious. I did. Ginny forgot how to form words. What? She whispered. Kyle stepped forward slightly. The rumor is correct. The Alpha King accepted your vow. Ginny grabbed the back of a chair before her legs rebelled again. You can't be serious. Lion continued as if she hadn't spoken. A vow accepted under the full moon is considered a declaration of intent. It binds both parties. I didn't intend anything, Ginny squeaked. You touched my chest, Lion said again, almost like a reminder or a warning. That was the alcohol, Ginny said loudly. Not me. The alcohol wanted your chest. I was just along for the ride. Rowan buried his face in his hand. Cale coughed into his fist to hide a laugh. Tallis was openly observing Ginny like she was the most interesting disaster he'd ever encountered. Lion did not react. Ginny, he said, you will come to the palace. Ginny jerked upright. Nope, absolutely not. I like my house. I like my small bed. I like my very average life that does not include a throne, a kingdom, or being murdered by jealous she-wolves. Lion held her gaze. You will come. Ginny swallowed. Why? Why would you even want me there? Lion took a breath, slow and deep. Because you triggered something that does not happen often, and I need answers. Ginny blinked. Triggered what? His jaw tightened. When you touched me, the bond stirred. Rowan choked. Mira gasped. Tallis stiffened. Cale simply nodded once, as if confirming something he already suspected. Ginny shook her head rapidly. No, that's impossible. The bond doesn't just stir. That's not a thing. It is for an Alpha King, Kyle said. Ginny shot him a glare. Please stop talking. Kyle smirked. Lion stepped even closer, and Ginny backed up until the table hit her hips. You may deny the vow, Lion said, but you cannot deny the reaction your presence caused. I absolutely can, Ginny said, voice cracking. Watch me deny it. Lion's eyes darkened. Come to the palace, he repeated, where we can determine the truth. Ginny pointed at him. I am not going anywhere with you. You scare me. You should be scared, Tallis muttered. Cale elbowed him. Lion finally softened his voice a fraction. I am not asking to punish you, Ginny. Oh, good, she snapped. I was worried this was some kind of royal execution invite. I am asking, Lion continued, because if the bond is real, you are in danger. Ginny froze. Danger? From who? Lion didn't answer. Kyle did. Everyone. Ginny stared at him. That's not comforting. It wasn't meant to be, Cale replied. Mira stepped forward. Ginny, maybe you should go, just to clear it up. Rowan nodded reluctantly. You can't hide from him, not if he accepted the vow. Ginny turned back to Lion. His expression hadn't shifted. He was steady, controlled, immovable. Ginny, he said softly, you brought this to my attention. Now we see it through. Ginny felt the world shrink around her. The vow, the festival, the bond he claimed had stirred. And now the Alpha King, this immovable force of nature, standing in her living room, telling her her life was no longer just hers. She exhaled slowly. If I come to the palace, she said carefully, what happens next? Lion didn't hesitate. Everything. And Ginny knew, with absolute certainty, that whatever waited for her in the palace, her quiet life was gone forever. Ginny Rose fled before dawn. She didn't pack. She didn't plan. She didn't even grab her favorite boots. She simply ran, driven by the overwhelming need to get away from the bond threading itself through her pulse. Her breaths came fast, uneven, as she sprinted through the early morning fog that clung to the forest like pale smoke. Every step hammered with one thought: distance. She needed distance from Lion's voice, from the vow he claimed had sealed them, from the way his presence pressed against her lungs like a quiet, unyielding command. But distance, as she quickly discovered, meant very little to an Alpha King. The forest around her was still waking, leaves trembling with the rising wind. Ginny pushed harder, shoving through branches that slapped her shoulders and legs. Her heartbeat was a frantic drum, but the bond tugging in her chest had its own rhythm. Slower, deeper, steady as a tide pulling her back toward the shore she was desperate to escape. She burst through a clearing, panting, and Lion was already there. He stood in the center of the narrow dirt path as though he had been waiting for her, tall and composed, his expression impossible to read. Beta Kale remained at his right, sharp-eyed, unamused. Gamma Talus lingered at his left, arms crossed, almost entertained, as though witnessing a spectacle he hadn't bought tickets for but was willing to watch anyway. Lion's gaze locked onto her without a flicker of surprise. "You ran far," he said calmly. "Not far enough." Ginny skidded to a stop, nearly tripping over her own panic. "You can't just appear everywhere I go." "I told you," Lion replied. "The vow was binding. The bond obeys it. So do I." "I didn't obey anything," Ginny snapped. "I didn't agree to be magically tied to a king." Talus's mouth twitched. Kale's jaw tightened. Lion remained steady, unchanged. "You felt it awaken," he said quietly. "What I felt," she countered, "was the worst stomach cramp of my life." Talus snorted. Kale shot him a glare. "But Lion—" Lion stepped closer, and the bond pulsed. Ginny felt it like a ripple beneath her skin, a warmth she did not want, a pull she refused to acknowledge. "No," she said, backing up so fast her heel slid in the dirt. No, this isn't happening. I'm not your mate. I'm not anybody's anything. I just made a stupid wish to the moon because I was having a bad night." "And the moon answered," Lion said. "Then the moon has terrible judgment." She spun and bolted again, ignoring Kale's low exhale and Talus's amused laugh. The forest swallowed her whole as she tore through it. Lion didn't follow this time. He didn't have to. "Talus," the king said behind her. "Keep her in sight." Ginny didn't hear the response, only the whisper of movement that told her the Gamma had obeyed. She ran until her legs shook, until her lungs burned, until the bond pressed like a hand between her shoulder blades, urging her to stop resisting. She didn't stop. Not until she collided, full force, into someone standing directly in her way. Talus caught her easily, steadying her before she hit the ground. He wasn't even breathing hard. "For the record," he said lightly, "you almost knocked me over. Almost." "Move," Ginny said through clenched teeth. "Can't. Orders are orders." She shoved at him. It was like trying to move a wall. "I swear," she hissed. "If one more wolf blocks my escape—" "You'll what?" Talus asked, curious rather than threatened. Before Ginny could come up with something impressive, the air shifted. A cold, electric current swept through the clearing. Seraphine Nightbane stepped into view. Her presence hit the world like a blade drawn across stone, sharp, dangerous, impossible to ignore. Her silver eyes found Ginny instantly, narrowing with a fury so controlled it trembled at the edges. "So," Seraphine said softly, "this is the human causing the disruption." Ginny swallowed hard. She didn't need to be told this woman was lethal. Everything about her made it obvious. Her beauty had edges. Her silence had weight. Her stare was a warning dressed in elegance. "I didn't ask to disrupt anything," Ginny said, trying to stay steady. "Trust me. I want no part of this." Seraphine's lip curled. You want nothing, and yet the Alpha King accepts you. Talus shifted uncomfortably. Even he knew better than to step between these two forces. Ginny lifted her chin. I didn't choose him. Seraphine stepped closer. But he chose you. The accusation cut deeper than Ginny expected. The bond pulled sharply, reacting to her rising fear. I don't want him, Ginny whispered. Seraphine's expression hardened. You will learn that wanting has nothing to do with destiny. Before the tension snapped into open conflict, Lion emerged from the trees behind Seraphine. His voice was a blade of authority. That is enough. Seraphine turned slowly, anger rippling through her like heat across stone. You indulge her. You weaken yourself. Lion's gaze never left Ginny. I do not need your approval. The bond tightened, alive, awake, relentless, and Ginny, shaking and breathless, understood the truth in one terrifying rush. She could run from the king, she could run from the wolves, she could run from the world itself, but she could not outrun a bond already rooted in her blood. And Lion knew it. He stepped toward her, the forest silent around them. You cannot run from this, he said softly. Ginny felt the pull tighten. She wished, desperately, that he was wrong. But her heart betrayed her with its answer. The forest seemed to hold its breath long after Lion's voice faded between the trees. Seraphine did not look at Ginny again. Not directly, but the fury radiating from her was sharp enough to slice through bark. She stood perfectly still. Hands clasped behind her back with the rigid posture of a soldier barely restraining herself. Ginny's instincts screamed that if Lion had not intervened, Seraphine would have torn her throat open then and there. Yet it was the way Seraphine's eyes clung to Lion as he moved past her that told the real story. Obsession didn't need words. It clung to her like scent. She had believed, too deeply, too long, that the moon goddess had carved her path beside him. And now, to watch a bewildered, unwilling outsider claim the place she had spent years preparing for. Ginny could practically feel the resentment crackle. Talus, sensing the danger, cleared his throat loudly. All right, he said. Everyone breathe. No murder before sunrise. Kyle shot him a dry look, but Talus just shrugged. Ginny didn't stay long enough to hear them argue. She walked away. Slow and unsteady, wanting nothing more than to disappear back into her quiet life. Except, she didn't have a quiet life anymore. Not while being tied by a supernatural bond she never asked for. Not while being watched by wolves who had been raised on duty, hierarchy, and instincts she didn't understand. And definitely not with a she-wolf like Seraphine, stalking around with a storm brewing behind her eyes. By mid-morning, Ginny had made it back to her home, exhausted, humiliated, and now freshly terrified. She needed grounding. She needed normalcy. And there were exactly two people who could give her that. Rowan and Mira arrived without even needing to be asked. Best friends had that built-in radar. They showed up when the world started collapsing. Rowan came first. Tall, blunt, and always looking like he'd just stepped out of an argument. Mira arrived minutes later, quieter but fiercely loyal, the type who could destroy you politely if needed. Ginny dropped onto the sofa. I think I'm bonded to the Alpha King. Rowan blinked slowly. Of this pack? No, Ginny deadpanned. The Alpha King of the pineapple orchard. Yes, this pack. Mira sat beside her, hands warm and grounding. Start from the beginning. Ginny did. The entire chaotic whirlwind spilled out. The Moonfire Festival, the Wolfberry shots, the drunken proposal, Lion's unexpected acceptance, and this morning's disastrous escape attempt. Rowan listened with a deepening scowl. So you're telling me you got drunk, proposed to a supernatural monarch, passed out, and he just said, sure, she's mine now? I said I was done dating, Ginny muttered into her hands. The universe didn't have to make it literal. Mira rubbed her back gently. Ginny, are you okay? I don't know, she admitted. Every time he's near, it feels like gravity is messing with me. And not in the cute romance novel way, more like a magnetic field that didn't ask for my permission. Rowan leaned an elbow on the table. And this Seraphine woman? What's her deal? Ginny shivered. She looked at me like I stole something from her. Did you? Rowan asked. Rowan, Mira warned. Ginny shook her head. No, I didn't steal anyone. She's just obsessed. And I mean capital O obsessed. Rowan exhaled sharply. Well, obsessed people are predictable. They get jealous, then stupid, then dangerous. Ginny did not like that prediction one bit. Meanwhile, in another part of the forest, Seraphine Nightbane moved like a shadow through the underbrush. Her thoughts churned darker than the soil beneath her boots. Destiny. Bond. Chosen mate. Words she had grown up believing applied to her. Since childhood, she had trained for it, fought for it, bled for it. Lion was more than her king. He was the center of her purpose, the axis around which every ambition had turned. And now, a girl with no wolf blood, no training, no heritage, no claim. A girl who smelled of fear and human softness had taken what was hers. Seraphine reached a fallen log and broke it clean in two with her bare hands. The crack echoed like a bone snapping. She could still see Lion's expression when he looked at Ginny. Focused, claiming, drawn. The bond had accepted the girl. The moon had accepted the girl. Even Lion, who rarely allowed emotion to surface, could not hide the pull. But Seraphine saw deeper. The girl didn't want him. She feared the bond, resented it, and that made her weak. Easy prey. Seraphine closed her eyes, breathing in the faint trace of Ginny's scent that lingered in her memory. She didn't need to attack Ginny outright. Not yet. There were other methods. Old methods. Methods wolves used long before diplomacy replaced instinct. A human girl's place in a pack depended on one thing: purity of the claim. If that purity was destroyed, the bond would fracture. Seraphine whispered to the trees, "If the bond breaks, he will return to me." The forest seemed to tremble, as though recoiling from the thought. Back at Ginny's home, the afternoon sun slanted through the windows as she stared at Rowan and Mira with hollow exhaustion. "I wish it were a bad dream," Ginny said. "I'd take waking up broke and hungover. I'd take losing my job. Hell, I'd take 3 surprise bills over being magically linked to a king who thinks vows spoken while drunk count as fate." Mira squeezed her hand. "We'll help you through this." Rowan stood. "First rule, no more running through forests like prey. Wolves chase prey. You don't want that dynamic." Ginny groaned. "I am the prey." "You're the potential Luna," Mira corrected softly. "You just don't feel like it yet." Ginny rubbed her temples. "And Seraphine?" Rowan answered for her. "Seraphine is the wolf who spent her whole life believing she had the job already. And trust me, people like that don't let go easily." Ginny closed her eyes. Yes. She knew that all too well. Somewhere out in the trees, Seraphine was already planning her next move. And Ginny could feel the storm building. Night pressed down over the packlands like a velvet curtain when Lion finally appeared again. Ginny had spent the rest of the day with Rowan and Mira, but as evening settled, so did a heavy quietness. Her friends eventually left, reluctantly, with warnings about locking her windows and refusing to travel anywhere alone. But once they were gone, her house felt too still, too exposed. The air hummed with an energy she could not name, a pull she could not silence. The bond was awake, and it wanted something. She had just sat on her bed when a low, steady knock echoed through her home. Not frantic, not demanding, just deliberate. She didn't need to open the door to know who it was. Ginny inhaled, steeling herself, then walked to the living room. Lion Draven stood in the doorway, framed by moonlight and tension. Not a soldier, not a king, just a man weighed down by something he hadn't yet spoken aloud. "May I come in?" he asked. The polite tone startled her. She stepped aside. "You're the Alpha King. Do you really need permission?" "Yes." His gaze held hers. "For this, I do." He entered slowly, closing the door behind him with a quiet click that felt too final, too intimate. Ginny crossed her arms, partly for courage, partly to keep her trembling hands from being obvious. "Is this about earlier?" she asked. "In part." Lion paused, scanning her face as though confirming she was unharmed. "You ran. The bond reacted too strongly. It could have destabilized." "You mean it could have broken?" "No." His voice dropped lower. "It could have hurt you." Ginny blinked. "Why would it hurt me?" "Because resisting a true bond is like resisting gravity. You can fight it, but the strain is not one-sided." He stepped closer. "And I do not want you harmed." For the first time, something unguarded moved across his features. Not command, not duty, something quieter, something almost vulnerable. Ginny's heartbeat stuttered, confused by the shift. "Why?" she asked. Lion held her gaze. "Because you were my mate." "But you didn't even know me." "No," he agreed, "and that is precisely the problem." He moved past her, not to loom, but to sit, quietly, deliberately, at the edge of her sofa. Not a king demanding space, a man offering presence. Ginny hesitated, then sat across from him. Lion took a steady breath. "You asked me earlier why I refused bonds for years." Ginny nodded. There was a long pause, as though he were searching for where to begin. "My father accepted the wrong mate," Lion said finally. "A woman chosen not by the moon but by politics. Their bond was weak, unstable. It made him weak. It made our pack vulnerable. When she died, he fell apart. When he died..." Lion exhaled slowly. "The pack nearly fell with him." Ginny felt the weight in his voice, heavy, old, and rarely spoken. "I swore I would never bind myself unless the moon chose for me," he continued. "Not my counsel, not tradition, not pressure, not fear." "So you avoided relationships?" "I avoided everything. Courtship, rituals, trial bonds. I kept my distance from anyone who tried to force a future into place." His jaw tightened. "Including Seraphine." Ginny winced slightly. "She seems determined." "Determination is not destiny," Lion said, "and obsession is not fate." The words hung between them. Lion searched her face, a softness edging into his expression. "I thought the moon would choose someone powerful, someone trained, someone who understood pack life, someone who wanted the throne as much as I did." He paused. "Then I heard you." Ginny's breath hitched. "While I was drunk?" "Yes." Something like amusement flickered in his eyes. "You declared your intentions to the moon with all the subtlety of a thunderstrike." "That's not the same as destiny," she argued. "I wasn't serious." "The moon does not measure seriousness by sobriety. It measures truth." Ginny shook her head. "What truth?" "That you wanted a bond strong enough to change your life," Lion said simply. "A bond worthy of being chosen." She froze. His voice was too calm, too certain. And something inside her, something she didn't want to acknowledge, responded to it. Lion didn't move any closer, but the bond pulsed faintly between them, warming the air. "You think this is fate?" she whispered. "Just because I said something stupid under a full moon?" "No," Lion said. And then, very gently, "I felt it the moment I touched you. The bond was not forced. It awakened. It chose. And it matched. Ginny swallowed hard. Even if I'm not ready, I will wait. He rose slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. But the bond is already forming. You can feel it. She could. God, she could. A quiet pulse at the base of her spine, a warmth beneath her skin when he looked at her. A sense of him, always somewhere just at the edge of her thoughts. You are afraid, he said, reading her easily. I understand. I don't want my life to be decided for me, she whispered. It isn't, Lion replied. It is only beginning. He stepped back toward the door, giving her space, but not distance. Rest tonight, he said. Tomorrow you and I will speak again. Why tomorrow? She asked. His eyes held hers with unmistakable certainty. Because fate is patient, Ginny, but I am not leaving. The bond pulsed again. Warmer this time. Welcome. And for the first time, Ginny did not pull away. By dawn, the world felt different. Ginny couldn't explain how, only that something in the air had shifted overnight. The bond hummed faintly beneath her skin, soft but unmistakable, like a heartbeat she could hear even when everything else was silent. She didn't ask for it. She didn't want it. But now, she couldn't deny it was there. And neither could the wolves. Talus was the first to notice the disruption in the forest that morning. Gamma of the pack, sharp as steel and twice as stubborn, he froze halfway through a patrol, nostrils flaring. Movement. Rogues. But faint. So faint it could have been a stray fox or some newly shifted adolescent sneaking out to flirt. He scanned the tree line again. Nothing but wind and leaves. The forest held no tension in it. No warning. No red flags. Just morning calm. Talus relaxed his shoulders. Probably nothing. He would remember that sentence later, with deep regret. But not yet. For now, he chalked up the sensation to an overactive instinct stirred by yesterday's chaos. The Alpha King claiming a mate was a seismic event. The pack was vibrating with the aftermath. Even the earth beneath them seemed to be adjusting. He pressed forward, unaware of the watching eyes camouflaged in the deeper shadows behind him. Eyes belonging to wolves who were not part of the pack at all. Far beyond Talus's reach, Seraphine Nightbane moved with purpose, her cloak trailing like a blade through the darkness. She stepped into a hidden clearing, the air thick with rogue scent. Wild, untamed, unaligned. Varek emerged from the shadows. Leader of the rogues. A wolf whose reputation carried whispers of brutality and cunning. Exactly the sort Seraphine needed. You called, Varek said, voice low and scratchy, like gravel dragged across stone. Seraphine met his gaze without flinching. I have a job, Varek smirked. I don't work for free. You'll be paid with what you want most, she replied. Chaos, fracture, a break in the Alpha King's stability. That got his attention. And the target? He asked. Seraphine's nails pressed into her palm as she spoke the name. Ginny Rose. Varek's grin widened. Ah, the little human. You want her eliminated? No. Seraphine's voice was ice. I want her ruined. I want her bond corrupted. She must be untouched when she's returned, but not unmarred. Varek understood instantly. His grin sharpened. You want her purity destroyed. Seraphine didn't answer. She didn't have to. The Alpha King will feel it the moment it happens, Varek added. It will break something in him. Seraphine's eyes glowed with cold satisfaction. Exactly. A deal was struck. The shadows swallowed them both. Meanwhile, Ginny stood in the training grounds behind the Alpha Hall, panting, sweat running down her spine. Today was her first official session, strengthening her body, calming her fear, sharpening instincts she didn't know she had. She hated every second of it, mostly because Lion insisted on supervising. He stood off to the side, arms crossed, expression unreadable, but his eyes tracked her every movement with the intensity of someone memorizing her breath patterns. Ginny swung again, missing the practice target. Lion didn't speak, but she felt him watching. Too closely, too intently. Talus finally arrived, late and exasperated. "She's training, not auditioning. Stop staring at her like she's the moon incarnate." Lion didn't look away. "I am observing." "You're hovering," Talus countered. Ginny dropped the training staff and glared. "Both of you stop talking like I'm not here." Lion's gaze softened. "Then prove you are here." It wasn't a challenge. It was an invitation. And for the first time, Ginny stepped toward it. Unaware that in the distant tree line, rogue eyes had already fixed on her future. And her doom. Evening settled over the packlands with a deceptive calm. The training grounds had emptied hours ago. Lion had finally, reluctantly, left Ginny alone, insisting that she rest. She pretended she wasn't relieved, but the pressure of his watchful presence still lingered along her skin like warmth that refused to fade. Rowan stayed behind with her, pacing her small living room like a restless guard dog. "You're wound up," Ginny said, watching him stalk past her bookshelf for the 5th time. "You attract trouble," Rowan muttered, "the kind that comes with claws and crown authority." "Forgive me for being a little on edge." Mira had left earlier to gather herbs for a calming tea. Rowan insisted Ginny needed it more than the Alpha King needed control. But now that she was gone, a strange tension filled the house. The silence felt weighted, the air thick. Rowan froze. "You feel that?" he asked. Ginny didn't. Not at first. Then, a wrongness slid through the room, a ripple in her chest, not pain but a tug, an instinctive pull she didn't understand. Her heart skipped. "Something's off," she whispered. Rowan reached for her, too late. The back window shattered inward in an explosion of glass and claws. 3 wolves, dark-coated, snarling, reeking of rogue scent, lunged inside. Ginny screamed as Rowan shoved her behind him, shifting partially, his eyes blazing with protective fury. "Run!" he barked. She tried. But one wolf struck Rowan hard, slamming him against the wall. The crack of impact was sickening. Rowan collapsed, gasping, blood blooming across his shoulder. "Rowan!" Ginny cried. Another wolf grabbed her from behind, claws digging into her arms. Pain sliced through her as she fought, kicking, twisting, trying to break free. The rogue snarled, clamping a hand over her mouth. "She's the one," he hissed to the others. "Take her!" "No, no!" Ginny's scream was muffled, desperation ripping from her throat. She reached toward Rowan, who clawed weakly at the floor, trying to drag himself up. "Let her go!" he choked. A savage blow knocked him unconscious. Ginny felt her courage shatter. Hands bound her wrists. A blindfold dropped over her eyes. The rogues lifted her, dragging her out through the window, away from her home. Away from safety. Away from Lion. Cold air slapped her skin as she was carried into the forest, darkness swallowing her whole. She kicked again, earning a growled warning. "Stop fighting. The mistress wants you alive." Mistress. Seraphine. Terror washed through her in a freezing wave. Miles away, deep inside the Alpha Hall, Lion stiffened. He felt it instantly. The bond snapped tight, then thrashed in panic, hitting him like a blow to the chest. His breath vanished. His wolf surged upward, howling through his veins with unrestrained fury. "Ginny." The single word tore from him, raw and feral. Kyle, sensing the shift, whirled toward him. What happened? "She's taken." The sound Lion made was not human. The walls vibrated with the force of his roar as his power surged uncontrollably, rattling lanterns, shaking stone. Talus burst in behind Coil. Rogues at the border, multiple scents, moving fast. Lion's eyes flashed gold, burning with lethal clarity. Track them. His voice was ice layered over wildfire. She is mine, he snarled, and I will tear the silver-bound wilds apart to get her back. The Alpha King shifted, bones cracking, power exploding outward, and somewhere in the dark woods, Ginny screamed his name, but the rogues only dragged her deeper, toward Seraphine, toward the trap, toward a fate Lion would kill the world to stop. Ginny's vision swam back into focus slowly, shapes hardening from haze into jagged stone and cold moonlight. Every muscle screamed as she tried to move, only to realize her wrists and ankles were bound, tightly, unforgivingly, to an ancient altar carved with runes that pulsed like a dying heartbeat. The air smelled of burnt herbs and iron, and wrongness, a deep, marrow-level wrongness. The silver-bound wilds were quiet. Too quiet. Then Seraphine stepped into view. The torchlight carved harsher shadows across her face, sharpening her beauty into something predatory. She wore ceremonial silver robes, but they were not sanctified by any moon priestess. They were stitched with rogue markings and something darker. Stolen magic. Finally awake, Seraphine murmured, her voice smooth as a polished blade. I was afraid you'd sleep through your own unmaking. Ginny strained against the bindings again, fury rising. Seraphine, this is insane. Whatever you think you're doing— What I'm doing, Seraphine cut in, is ending this farce before it destroys everything. Her eyes burned with something unstable, too bright. You were never meant to be Luna. Lion was never meant to look at you the way he looks at me. Ginny's breath stalled. He doesn't— Oh, he does. A twisted smile. But not enough. Not yet. Not irrevocably. And that is precisely why this ritual must happen tonight. Seraphine lifted a jagged moonstone, blackened, cracked, thrumming with corrupted glow. Its veins pulsed like something alive. Ginny's heart punched hard against her ribs. She had read about corrupted stones, in old, half-banned texts, in warnings whispered by outcast witches. They could sever or warp bonds. They could kill. And they always demanded a price. Seraphine, you don't know what you're tampering with. Seraphine's smile widened, brittle and triumphant. I know exactly what I'm tampering with. She lifted the stone higher, letting its sick light spill across Ginny's skin. Do you think I went through years of standing by his side just to be replaced by a human who stumbled in by accident? Ginny stared back, refusing to flinch. You're going to destroy yourself before you ever destroy me. Seraphine's laugh was low, chilling. I'm willing to pay that price. Are you willing to pay yours? Behind her, Varric and two rogue wolves chanted in a low, rhythmic cadence, their voices scraping against the air like rust. The runes beneath Ginny's spine began to glow brighter. Heat built, sharp and crawling, as if the altar itself were waking up. Ginny twisted hard, breath ragged. She could feel the magic gathering, static in the air, pressure in her head, a pull deep in her chest where the forming mate bond lived like a fragile thread of light. She felt it tightening, and then it recoiled, snapped, screamed. Not her scream, Lion's. It wasn't a sound in the air. It was inside her skull, inside her bones, a feral, instinctive roar of a man whose bond had been violently tugged off-center. The runes flared in response. She gasped as the magic burned across her arms, searing through her veins like liquid fire. Seraphine stepped closer, holding the moonstone above Ginny's heart. By the corrupted light, she whispered, I sever you from him. No! Ginny jerked, desperate, breath tearing. Seraphine, stop! But the stone dropped. Not onto her, but hovering a fraction above her sternum, held by a field of twisting force as the ritual locked into place. Darkness rippled outward. Ginny felt it like a claw around her soul. A sudden blast of wind tore through the clearing. The torches flickered violently, and somewhere in the wilds, a howl split the night, raw, enraged, unstoppable. Lion was coming. Seraphine's eyes widened, not in fear, but in a feverish delight. "Let him come," she breathed. "He'll arrive just in time to watch you fall." The corrupted moonstone pulsed over Ginny's chest. One beat, two, each throb dragging heat through her bones. Seraphine chanted faster, voice slicing through the clearing like broken glass. The air vibrated, the altar trembled, and Ginny felt the mate bond fray like a rope about to snap. Then the forest went silent. Not quiet. Silent. As if every tree, every creature, every breath in the wilds had frozen. Seraphine's words hitched. A low rumble began beneath the earth. The wind reversed direction. Shadows bled outward between the trees. And Lion arrived. Not walking. Not running. Exploding from the tree line in a blur of monstrous power. Half man, half wolf, fully wrath. His alpha shift towered, broad shoulders bristling with charcoal fur, eyes burning with a golden intensity that was unmistakably no longer civilized. Ginny had never seen him like this. This was not the controlled, dangerous calm of the Alpha King. This was the force of nature beneath the crown. Seraphine stepped back instinctively. Even she wasn't reckless enough to pretend this was the version of Lion she wanted attention from. The rogue wolves reacted first. Poor idiots. Varric lunged with a snarl, swinging a blade carved from bone. Lion didn't hesitate. He moved like death itself, brutal and fast. One swipe sent Varric crashing into a tree with a sickening thud. A second rogue charged. Lion caught him mid-air and slammed him into the ground so hard the earth split. The third rogue didn't even get the chance to scream. Lion's jaws closed around his shoulder, tearing through muscle and bone with terrifying precision. He dropped the limp body without looking back, already moving. It wasn't a fight. It was obliteration. Seraphine's facade cracked for the first time. "Lion, wait, listen to me." But the Alpha didn't stop. He stalked toward her, each step deliberate, controlled only by the slimmest thread of sanity. His claws were dripping. His breathing was a low, guttural growl. "You touched her." The words came out distorted, half growled, half human. Seraphine raised her hands. I tried to save you," she insisted, voice trembling. "She's not meant for you. She's weakening you. You needed to be free of her." Lion's snarl shook the air. "You tried to sever a bond that wasn't yours to touch." Pure terror flickered in Seraphine's eyes. "Please." But Lion was already turning away from her, because Ginny gasped. The corrupted moonstone had begun sinking toward her chest, drawn by the ritual's last claws of magic. Lion pivoted, tearing through the last barrier of runes with a roar that cracked the stone altar. Magic sputtered violently as he ripped the bindings from her wrists. Ginny collapsed forward only for Lion to catch her instantly, scooping her into his arms with a gentleness that contradicted the carnage behind them. His massive form shuddered as the mate bond snapped back into place, raw and burning. He cradled her as though she were the only tether keeping him human. Ginny blinked up at him, exhausted, disoriented. "Lion!" Her voice was barely a whisper, but it froze him. His wolf retreated just enough that his eyes softened, still gold, still feral, but anchored. "You're safe now," he said, voice roughened by the shift. "I have you." He didn't spare Seraphine another glance. Not a threat, not even an acknowledgement. He simply gathered Ginny tighter, turned toward the trees, and carried her out of the clearing like a king reclaiming what had always been his. Behind them, the moonstone cracked, and Seraphine realized she had not broken their bond at all. She had strengthened it. Mira worked quickly, her hand steady as she pressed healing salves into the bruises along Ginny's ribs. The herbal scent, cool, sharp, grounding, filled the room, but Ginny barely noticed it. She lay propped against pillows, exhausted but alive, trying to piece together fragments of the ritual and the sheer terror of the night. Across the room, Lion sat like a stone sentinel. He hadn't moved since they'd returned. Not once. Not even when Mira snapped at him for hovering too close. Ginny tried to hide a small smile. Mira had told him to give her room to breathe, but Lion simply adjusted his chair by 3 inches and declared that was enough. Mira had given up after that. Now he watched Ginny with an intensity that made the air feel heavy, like every breath he released was an admission he wasn't ready to voice. "Drink this," Mira instructed, placing a steaming cup into Ginny's hands. "It'll calm the aftershocks from the corrupted magic." Ginny nodded, sipping carefully. Her throat protested, her muscles burned. Yet beneath it all was something else, a warmth she couldn't quite name, humming quietly between her and Lion. A bond, not fully formed, but alive. After Mira left, silence settled between them. Not awkward, just dense. Ginny's gaze drifted toward him. Lion sat forward, elbows on his knees, his eyes fixed on her as though she might vanish if he looked away. "You don't have to stay," she murmured. His response was immediate. "I'm not leaving." Ginny exhaled slowly. "Lion, I'm fine." "You were nearly taken from me," he said, low and rough. "You were tied to an altar, terrified, alone, and I didn't get there fast enough." She blinked. "You tore through a forest and a pack of rogues like they were paper. I'd say you got there pretty fast." That earned her the faintest shift of his expression. Something not quite a smile, but close. Ginny suddenly felt heat rise in her cheeks and looked away. He cleared his throat, gaze dropping to the floor for a moment, as if wrestling something deep inside himself. "I felt it," he said at last. Ginny looked up. "Felt what?" "The bond," Lion answered. "The first spark of it. The moment you proposed." "Oh, fantastic." Ginny wished she could melt straight into the mattress. "I was drunk out of my mind," she muttered. His eyes softened further. "And yet it was honest." She froze. He leaned slightly closer, voice careful but unshielded. "I have resisted bonds my entire life," he said. "Rejected them, feared them. I saw what they did to my father, how consuming they were. I swore I would never let a bond dictate my strength. Or my throne." Ginny swallowed. But when you stood there, moon-drunk and furious at the world, and told me to marry you." He exhaled, a shaky, disbelieving thing. Something shifted, something I couldn't ignore. Ginny's heartbeat pulsed painfully in her chest. "Lion, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not Luna material. I'm barely Ginny material." He reached out, slow enough for her to pull away. She didn't. "You survived a ritual designed to break your spirit," he said. "You stood up to Seraphine even while terrified. You do not see yourself clearly, Ginny, but I do." The bond pulsed again between them, warm, bright, unmistakable. She drew in a shaky breath. "I don't know how to be what you need." "You don't have to know," Lion said. "Just stay." The words weren't a command. They were a plea. Ginny met his gaze, the weight of everything finally settling. Not fear, not obligation, but something dangerous, something thrilling. Slowly she nodded. And Lion, the Alpha King who never let anyone close, finally allowed himself to breathe. Even under strict guard, the pack remained restless. Rumors about Seraphine's betrayal spread like wildfire, and Lion doubled security around the infirmary where Ginny was recovering. But danger has a way of slipping through cracks, especially when it's fueled by obsession. By morning, the sky hung low and gray, pressing on the territory like a warning. Ginny sat on the cushioned bench beneath the window, wrapped in a blanket Mira insisted she keep. Her muscles still ached, but her mind was clearer now. She replayed Lion's confession over and over, feeling the bond hum through her like a slow-burning ember. She didn't notice the shadow moving along the rooftop. Kyle did. The beta had been pacing the perimeter. His wolf senses sharpened by guilt for not predicting Seraphine's betrayal sooner. The moment he caught the faintest shift of air above the infirmary, he followed it. Silent, coiled, ready. Inside, Ginny stood and stretched, unaware of the threat slipping through the open window behind her. A whisper of cold air brushed her neck. She turned. Seraphine lunged. Her eyes were wild, feral with desperation and madness. Her once perfect braid had come undone, streaks of dirt and blood marking her pale face. She held a curved silver blade, the kind designed to cut deep and kill clean. "You don't belong here," she hissed. "He was supposed to choose me. Me! You're nothing. You're a mistake he refuses to correct." Ginny stumbled back, hitting the wall. Her heart slammed against her ribs. "Seraphine, stop." "No more chances," Seraphine breathed, stepping forward like a predator savoring the moment. "No more interruptions. I will fix this bond, break it, erase it, whatever it takes." The blade rose. Kyle crashed through the window. The beta tackled Seraphine with the force of a landslide, knocking her to the ground so hard the floorboards cracked. Her scream echoed through the room, raw and furious. The blade skittered across the floor, vanishing under a cabinet. Ginny pressed herself against the wall, breath shuddering. Kyle pinned Seraphine, snarling. "You're finished," she spat at him. "You think he'll thank you for this? Lion needs someone strong, someone worthy." "You lost the right to speak his name," Kyle snapped. Footsteps thundered down the hall, Mira, Rowan, guards. And then Lion himself entered, eyes already glowing with barely controlled fury. When he saw Seraphine, his expression turned cold. Not angry, not wounded. Final. "Seraphine Nightbane," he said, voice deep as a storm front. "You break into my territory. You attempt to murder my mate. You violate the oldest laws of wolfkind." His jaw tightened, and the room seemed to darken around him. "There is no path back from this." Pinned beneath Kyle, Seraphine laughed, a broken, trembling sound. "She'll ruin you. You'll see. You'll regret ever touching her." Lion stepped closer, gaze unflinching. "What I regret," he said, "is trusting that your ambition had limits." Seraphine stiffened, but didn't speak again. Lion turned to Kale. "Take her." The beta hauled her to her feet. Seraphine writhed, her voice cracking as she shouted after Lion, "You're choosing wrong! You're choosing weakness!" He didn't respond. He didn't even look at her. She was dragged from the room, her screams echoing down the corridor until they were swallowed by distance. Hours later, the official decree went out. Seraphine Nightbane, former elite she-wolf of the Crown Pack, is hereby stripped of status and exiled beyond all territorial borders. Should she return, the sentence is death. The pack accepted the ruling without question. Betrayal this severe carried only one outcome. That evening, Lion returned to Ginny's bedside. She sat quietly, wrapped in the blanket again, still shaken. He approached slowly, as though she might collapse if he moved too quickly. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No," she whispered. "Just trying to understand why she hated me so much." "She didn't hate you," Lion said. "She hated that she could never be what she imagined. You simply became the target." Ginny exhaled, letting the truth settle. "And I will never let her, or anyone, come near you again." It wasn't a promise, it was a vow, and Ginny felt the bond settle deeper, anchoring itself quietly, undeniably, into her heart. By the next sunrise, the pack moved with a different rhythm, calmer, steadier, as if Seraphine's exile had released a collective breath everyone had been holding. Yet the biggest shift was happening inside Ginny. Her world, once small and predictable, now stretched into territory she'd never imagined touching. Luna training. She had heard the rumors. Brutal, intense, steeped in tradition. The sort of thing meant for raised-to-rule she-wolves, not a young woman who accidentally proposed to the Alpha King while drunk. But Lion insisted she begin immediately, not because he demanded her rise, but because he believed she could. So, at dawn, Ginny found herself standing in the grand courtyard, surrounded by pack elders, trainees, and warriors, all pretending not to stare at her too directly. Rowan gave her a thumbs up from the edge. Mira waved encouragingly. Kyle looked like he was evaluating whether she would pass or spontaneously combust. Talus just grinned like he already had popcorn. The elder mistress, an iron-spined woman named Lady Arwen, stepped forward. "Ginny Everwood," she announced, voice echoing across the stone. "Do you accept the mantle of Luna trainee?" Ginny swallowed hard. "Yes." "Do you agree to uphold pack law, defend the territory, honor the Alpha King, and embody the principles of Crown Pack leadership?" Her throat tightened. "I will try my best." Lady Arwen's eyes softened a fraction. Trying your best is exactly where every Luna begins. Training started instantly. Ginny's days filled with pack law lessons that made her head burn, combat drills that made her muscles scream, and hours of strategy training designed to test patience, instinct, and judgment. She stumbled. She sweated. She cursed under her breath more often than she spoke. Some wolves whispered she wouldn't last. A few even said she was a temporary placeholder until Lion came to his senses. Ginny ignored them. Mostly. Except when she didn't. Lion's presence didn't help. Whenever he passed through training grounds, half the pack stopped what they were doing to watch him. His aura alone demanded complete attention. But when his gaze flicked to Ginny, even briefly, something in her straightened, sharpened, steadied. Still, nothing prepared her for the trial. A public test of strength and wits, traditionally held to evaluate whether a future Luna possessed the resilience and mental sharpness to lead her people. Lady Arwen insisted Ginny take it early, not as punishment, but because she needed the pack to see her capability now, not someday. When Ginny arrived at the arena, the stands were packed. Warriors, elders, curious onlookers, and of course, Lion, seated in the high box, expression unreadable, but gaze fixed entirely on her. The trial had two parts. The first was physical, a gauntlet designed to measure endurance, obstacles, sparring bouts, and a stamina test using weighted strikes against a training post enchanted to track strength output. Ginny surprised them all. She was not the fastest, nor the strongest, but she was relentless. Every time she stumbled, she got up. Every time she was knocked down, she reset her stance. Sweat drenched her hair, dirt smeared across her face, muscles shaking, but she kept going. Talus cheered. Mira practically screamed. Kyle muttered something about unexpected resilience. Lion didn't react at all, but his eyes darkened with something hard and bright. Pride. The second part of the trial was the real test. The Wits Challenge. Ginny entered a circular room with 6 elders seated around her. They presented real pack crises, territorial disputes, rogue negotiations, internal conflicts, and she had to respond as a Luna would. Ginny wasn't perfect, but she was honest. Calm. Surprisingly sharp under pressure. Her answers lacked political polish, but they carried sincerity and practicality, something the elders valued more than she expected. When she finished, Lady Arwen stood before the crowd. "Ginny Everwood," she declared, "has demonstrated not only courage, but the resilience and clarity required of a future Luna." Applause broke out, some enthusiastic, some polite, some reluctant, but none louder than the scrape of Lion rising to his feet in the high box. He did not smile. He simply nodded once, firm, proud, resolute. And the entire arena felt the meaning of it. Ginny wasn't an accident. Ginny wasn't temporary. Ginny was becoming Luna. The night of the full moon arrived with a kind of stillness that felt deliberate, like the world itself had paused to witness what was coming. The entire Mooncrest pack gathered in the ceremonial clearing, a wide circle framed by ancient stones and illuminated by silver moonlight that hit the earth like liquid metal. Ginny stood at the center. Breath caught somewhere between awe and fear. Her Luna training robes fluttered softly in the rising breeze, the fabric shimmering faintly with threads woven for this ritual alone. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears, matching the distant howl of wolves taking their positions around the perimeter. This was real. Not a mistake, not an accident, not a drunken encounter fated to haunt her forever. She was about to become Luna. And Lion, Alpha King, terrifying force of nature, man she had grown to trust and crave, was about to become hers in every possible way. He approached the clearing with a slow, measured stride. His power rolled ahead of him like thunder, the crowd bowing instinctively as he passed. For a moment, Ginny forgot how to breathe. The ceremonial markings along his arms glowed faintly under the moonlight, accentuating the fierce, controlled strength he carried. When their eyes met, something in her steadied. He stepped into the center with her, stopping just close enough that the heat of his body brushed hers. "Are you ready?" he asked, voice low. Ginny swallowed. "I think so." He gave a small, rare smile. "You are." Lady Arwen raised her staff, striking it once against the stone. A ripple of energy spread outward, silencing the entire pack. "The full moon recognizes the bond between Alpha Lion Draven and Ginny Everwood," she began, voice ringing with ancient authority. "Tonight, they stand before the goddess to complete their claiming. Let their spirits be joined. Let their wolves rise." Ginny's pulse surged. Lion extended his hand, the gesture simple but heavy with meaning. She placed her hand in his. The moment their skin touched, moonlight thickened around them, swirling upward in a shaft of shimmering silver. Ginny gasped as warmth spread through her chest, her wolf stirring with a howl of instinctual recognition. Lion's aura flared. "Speak your vow," Lady Arwen ordered. Lion stepped closer, gaze locked onto Ginny as though no one else existed. "I accept you, Ginny," he said, voice deep, steady, and raw, "as my mate, as my equal, as the one who challenges me, anchors me, and forces me to face the man beneath the crown." Her breath hitched. "You are the first bond I have ever chosen," he continued, "and the only one I will ever accept." Her chest squeezed painfully at the admission. The entire crowd shifted, some visibly stunned. It was no small thing for an Alpha King to declare that. Lady Arwen nodded toward Ginny. "Speak your vow." Ginny inhaled shakily. Her voice trembled at first, but strengthened with each word. "I choose you, Lion, not because you're the Alpha King, though you are." She allowed herself a small smile. "But because with you, I feel stronger, braver, seen." Lion's jaw tightened, the emotion hitting him visibly. "I accept this bond," Ginny said. "I accept you, and whatever comes with you, your power, your shadows, your crown, I'll face them with you." The moon flared. Lion cupped her face with both hands, reverent and fierce at once. "Ginny," he whispered, voice thick, "let me in." She nodded. The claiming began. It wasn't physical, not at first. It was spirit meeting spirit, wolf meeting wolf. A surge of heat rushed through her as something ancient unfurled inside her chest, snapping into alignment with Lion's. Their bond ignited. A lightning strike of recognition and surrender that took her breath away. The pack bowed as the energy spiraled around them, luminous and powerful. Ginny gasped as the final wave of the bond settled into her bones. Warm, consuming, perfect. Lion pulled her into his arms, forehead pressed to hers, exhaling shakily as his wolf howled through him in pure acceptance. She couldn't speak. She didn't need to. They were bound, fully, irrevocably. Lady Arwen raised her staff once more. "Behold your Alpha King," she declared, "and your Luna." The pack roared, howls, cheers, cries of devotion rising into the night sky. Lion held Ginny tighter as the moon bathed them both in silver fire. King and Luna, bonded, united, unstoppable. The night after the full moon, claiming settled over the territory with a strange, humming calm. The pack still buzzed from celebration, but the energy had shifted, more reverent, more watchful, as if they all sensed that something larger had been set in motion. Ginny felt it too. Her bond with Lion pulsed gently beneath her skin, warm and steady, like a heartbeat that wasn't hers but fit her perfectly. Every time he drifted near, her wolf stretched like a satisfied cat. Every time he touched her, even briefly, it was as if her entire body exhaled. But tonight, she found herself sitting in Mira's herb room, watching the healer grind moonleaf petals with far more tension than the task required. Mira kept glancing at the door, then at Ginny, then back at the bowl. She was nervous. Mira never got nervous. "All right," Ginny said finally, crossing her arms. "You're either about to tell me something important, or you accidentally set something on fire and don't want to admit it." Mira froze mid-grind. Ginny's stomach dropped. "Mira." The healer let out a long breath. "Sit, please." Ginny sat instantly. Mira set the bowl aside and perched on the edge of the table, fingers twisting in her lap. A bad sign if Ginny had ever seen one. "There's something I should have told you earlier," Mira said quietly. "Something the elders have debated keeping quiet, but after the claiming there's no more point in silence." Ginny straightened. "What is it?" Mira met her gaze, solemn. "You were chosen long before you met Lion." Ginny blinked. "Chosen? By who? The goddess?" "In a way, yes." Mira reached into the cabinet behind her and retrieved a scroll sealed with silver wax. She unraveled it carefully, revealing an ancient illustration of a moon, split down the center by two interlocking wolves. "This is the prophecy of the Silver Bond," Mira said. "It's older than the pack itself." Ginny frowned. "Wait, what does that have to do with me?" Mira pointed to the text beneath the wolves. "The Alpha King's true mate will choose him freely, under moonlight, with unclouded heart, or be lost to him forever." Ginny stared. Her pulse quickened. "Unclouded heart?" "Mira, I was drunk out of my mind when I proposed to him." "Yes," Mira said, "which is why this gets complicated." Ginny's breath caught. "Explain." Mira hesitated, then spoke softly. "Ginny, you weren't supposed to be drunk." Ginny blinked. "What?" Mira took a slow breath, gathering her thoughts. "The Moonfire Festival that night. You drank wolfberry shots, yes? Strong, but not enough to knock someone out unless they were incredibly lightweight." Ginny squinted. "I mean, maybe I am." "No," Mira said firmly. "Ginny, someone spiked your drink. Deliberately." Ginny shot upright. "What? Who would—" "We don't know yet," Mira interrupted. "But we do know why." Ginny's heart hammered. "Tell me." Mira looked at her with a mixture of dread and certainty. "Because of the prophecy. Someone wanted you to make a choice under moonlight, without overthinking, without running away, and to trigger Lion's recognition before he could avoid it." It felt like the ground shifted under Ginny's feet. "So someone pushed fate," she whispered. Mira nodded. "Hard." Ginny's thoughts scattered. Who would do that? Who would risk upending tradition, destiny, and political balance just to get her and Lion bonded? Could it have been Seraphine? Ginny asked. Mira shook her head immediately. Seraphine would never have facilitated your bond. She wanted it severed, not strengthened. Ginny swallowed. Then who? That, Mira said quietly, is what you must uncover. Because whoever did this, they knew the prophecy intimately, and their agenda may not be as romantic as they wanted it to look. Ginny rubbed her temples. So someone manipulated the moment that changed my entire life. Yes, Mira said softly, and given the power you and Lion now share, whoever orchestrated it may not be done. A cold shiver worked its way down Ginny's spine, but beneath it was something else. A spark. Determination. So what you're telling me, Ginny said slowly, is that my drunken disaster might not have been my fault at all. Mira gave her a rueful smile. Not even a little. Ginny exhaled, feeling the weight of a new path unfolding before her. A conspiracy, a prophecy, a push toward destiny she never agreed to, and someone out there who wanted her bonded to the Alpha King, for reasons still unknown. Ginny stood, shoulders straightening. All right, she said quietly. Then we find out who and why. Because one thing was certain. Her story wasn't ending at the claiming. It was just beginning. The prophecy is no longer a whisper in the dark. It's a fuse burning straight toward a truth Ginny isn't ready for. A truth someone in Mooncrest desperately wanted to force into reality. Whoever spiked her drink the night everything changed. They're still out there, watching, waiting. And the motives behind that single act may be far more dangerous than any rival pack or jealous suitor. Because fate doesn't like being tampered with, and in Mooncrest, nothing stays buried for long. If you want to know who set all of this in motion, and what it means for Lion, Ginny, and the entire kingdom, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You're not going to want to miss what comes next.